been talking about the governance aspects here a lot, but also I'm curious about the political side of the use of these technologies. Armenia had a very interesting political upheaval, some say revolution, about a year ago, a little bit more. How did digitization play into those political dynamics?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for the question. Actually, the infrastructure is very well grown in Armenia. We have 4G plus network almost over 80% of the territory. And we have been piloting 3G, the first countries of the world, and people can enjoy the mobile internet roughly in all of the territory of Armenia. So what happened, the current prime minister, the leader of opposition who led the country to the revolution last year, the peaceful and love revolution, how we call it, he was just getting live in Facebook, and thousands of people were following it online, and they had an opportunity to follow it through their mobile phones. So what was happening after when the prime minister had to close the roads, it was happening like in 1 hour, all the territory of Armenia. So, and it also brings the opportunity for people to use their phones, connect online, and also enjoy the other functionality. So we also educated people to really use their smartphones in the other way than they used to be used. So I think the influence of the technology on the politics and the country's growth is tremendous, both in political and social view. And I would encourage everyone to really educate their people to use it. It reduces the bureaucracy, it reduces the, and it increases the involvement of the people into the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, last but not least is Qubad Taڵەbانی, Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan region in Iraq. And you too are an engineer by training.
Yes, yeah, I'm also an engineer. And just distinguished Prime Minister, guests, ministers, it's an honor to be here. It's my second time in Estonia, my first time attending this conference, and I'm very delighted to be here. I'm also very delighted to see that there are also microphone issues here in Estonia, because there isn't an event in Kurdistan where there isn't a few minutes of fiddling around with microphones. So this makes me a lot happier, and it'll make me a lot more patient with our tech guys when I go back home to say if it happens in Estonia, it can happen in Kurdistan. So thank you for that, and I'm sure my tech guys will be very happy about that as well. Our situation is somewhat unique in the sense that we are a sub-sovereign entity, and our road to digital transformation, while it may share some similarities with other stories that we've heard, I will be honest and say it really came out of necessity rather than choice. In 2014, we had big issues with our federal government, which cut our budget. We had a war. ISIS invaded the country and took over a third of Iraqi territory. This led to huge population migration, resulting in 1.8 million people being displaced, moving to the Kurdistan region, ultimately increasing our population by 30%. This all took a toll on the infrastructure and our resources. If that wasn't enough, oil prices plummeted from $140 to 100 to 100 to 60, 60 to 40, 40 to 20. So we were left with a massive fiscal deficit, huge political issues, security threats, and a humanitarian crisis. If that wasn't enough, there was also internal political upheaval. So this put a massive strain on our government. Our fiscal deficit was growing. We fell behind in paying salaries. We fell behind in delivering public services projects. And this all led to increasing level of unhappiness within our population. So we were really forced into action. And we had enormous legal obstacles, we had enormous bureaucratic obstacles. So the way that we decided to break through some of these barriers was to use technology. And one of the first initiatives we did was to look at the biggest spending for us is in the civil service. We have a huge civil service, and when you can't pay salaries on time, we needed to figure out how can we pay salaries on time. Well, we need to find out who we're paying. So we called in the cabinet and we said, all right, who are we paying? There was no data. Everything was on paper. Everything was dispersed among multiple ministries and departments. So we introduced a biometric registration program to biometrically register every single employee, pensioner, fiscal benefit recipient in the government. And in 6 months, we were able to register over 1.2 million people. This gave us a clear snapshot, one, of where the problem is, two, where the solutions are. Parallel to that, we began a major overhaul of our Ministry of Finance. We started to introduce new practices. We started to digitize our customs clearance processes, which expedited the customs clearance processes from 3 hours to sometimes 15 minutes. Every ministry, because we had no money, ministries like to do projects. Ministers are used to cutting ribbons, laying foundation stones for buildings that are going up. And this is what we had been used to for many years. But because the money dried up, it forced our government to look inwards and to see how they could improve how they function, how each ministry can function. So we tasked the ministries to say, all right, you don't have money to do projects, you can't cut more ribbons now, fix yourselves, fix how you operate, streamline the processes. So another exciting initiative for us was a program that we are starting and we're implementing called Services, which we basically process mapped every transaction between the government and the citizen. And we now have about 380 individual transactions, individual interactions between our government and our public. And we collected the data, verified the data, and have put the data into a web portal where citizens can now see, how do you apply for a driver's license? How do you apply for, you register your company? A whole host of services. Now, we're not providing these services online yet, but we're getting ready to. We're putting in place the mindset that we're moving towards a new digital era. Now, with this, we've been able to highlight also the deficiencies that we have, the enormous bureaucracy, the complications that we have, the number of unnecessary steps it requires to renew your driver's license, for example. So it's almost like shaming ourselves into action, because if you publicize your faults, then your citizens will say, hang on a minute, surely there's an easier way of doing this. So administrative reform, fiscal reform is ongoing on a whole host of issues, but also in our Ministry of Interior, for example. One of the things that separates us from the rest of the country, and this is a very unique situation, is we're trying to promote foreign investment. So we want to make it easy for people to visit Kurdistan. So we don't make people wait 3 months to get a visa to come to Iraq. We have instituted our own e-visa process where you can apply for a visa online, and within an hour or so, you'll be approved or rejected based on the data that is submitted. And this makes it easy for foreign investors to come in. And it gives them the sense that there is a government that is open, that is a government that wants them there. And parallel to that, we have an e-residency program, where we're now home to lots of foreign workers, foreign labor, skilled and unskilled, and putting in place this e-residency program has not only helped us document the workers, but it is also, inadvertently, this wasn't initially the idea, but it's helped us deal with a horrible scourge of human trafficking. So by knowing who is working and which foreign labor is coming from which country, we're able to one, know who these people are, two, speak to the host governments to say, is this one of your citizens? Is this person safe? And we're able to keep make sure that they're safe, make sure that they're not mistreated. So through digitization, we're learning every step, every day. We're learning not only to provide or to try to provide better services, but it's helping us with crime. It's helping us with things such as trafficking. And it's also connecting Kurdistan, which is physically landlocked and sub-sovereign, where we have little sovereignty on the ground, but we're starting to develop digital sovereignty. And we're starting to overcome some of the physical and political and geopolitical problems that we face, being neighbors with Iran, Turkey, part of Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. There's an interesting neighborhood that we live and work in. We're able to maybe sometimes overcome some of the physical barriers that we have. But this is the positive side of things. Now, we have at the same time enormous challenges. Besides the politics, besides the geopolitics, we have many rural areas. Yes, mobile penetration in Kurdistan is around 90%, but the ability for people, especially in the rural areas, to access technology, to be able to use portals and things like this is limited. So there is, I'm sure we can learn from other experiences. But I also think that in Kurdistan, dinosaurs still roam the earth. I know they were extinct in other parts of the world, but we still have them. And they're bureaucrats, and they love bureaucracy, and they love to look at laws and regulations and guidelines and use these laws and regulations and guidelines to complicate processes. And not to expedite processes, but they will find this regulation and use this regulation to not do something. And this drives us crazy. Right? And so I keep telling them the meteorite has hit Earth. Right? Dinosaurs were extinct, and those that still roam the Earth will eventually become extinct. And this is the challenge that we face, the bureaucrat.
As a former civil servant myself. But you could point out to them, that you have many other dinosaurs already under the ground in Kurdistan.
We do. We're a very old society. I mean, Erbil, our capital.
All the oils used to be dinosaurs. So
and the oil is a curse. Our oil is a curse because it made our political and governing system lazy, right? And we only woke up to the curse of oil when oil became, $20-something a barrel. So now we need to reprioritize. And we look at our population. We have a very young population, 70% around 30 or under. They're all on technology. They're all on Facebook. They're all on social media. They're interested in technology. And one thing I forgot to mention, which is actually what connected us with Estonia, was we're digitizing our court system. The help of the Estonian government, actors, an Estonian private sector company is showing us the way, digitizing the court system, which is, again, expediting the legal process, making it more transparent. So we're trying to prove on a case-by-case basis that digitization is the way to go. But I feel like a kid in a sweet shop being here, because I'm hearing so many good stories, so many exciting ventures. We need help in how to prioritize what needs to be done. We have the public accounting law of Iraq, which, again, another problem of ours is that we are a sub-sovereign. So there are some sovereign issues, such as national ID cards, such as even residency. There is some complications. Banking is a problem. So as a sub-sovereign, there are things that we're limited to. Federal laws. The Iraqi public accounting law is from 1940. I was audited once by the Supreme Audit Office, and they realized they had a major complaint against my office. And that is I used electronic accounting software, QuickBooks or something like this. And they said, this is illegal. I said, what do you mean it's illegal? They said, it's illegal. Look, they showed me the law, the legislation, 1940. And I said, but I've made... And I said, what do you want me to do? They said they had these big ledgers, these huge books, and you have to manually fill out every transaction, because digital signatures are not approved, and the use of Excel, forget QuickBooks or Quicken, Excel was illegal.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, these are the dinosaurs that like this, right? But I'm optimistic because we do have agents of change within our system. We've got a young team embedded in the system that wants to make it happen. And to come to Estonia and hear how open Estonia is about helping others. You know, they're not holding all of these secrets as proprietary information and not sharing it with people. The fact that you're able to share your experience and encourage and promote this is so much more exciting than the countless investment conferences that sometimes I'll attend. Because this is practical. This is not theoretical. This is not something that is just nice fuzzy language. This actually is, you know, zeros and ones. This is you know, on or off. But what I would like to see, actually, because I've spoken to many people over the last 2-3 days, and there are many experiences that are very similar, is how can we structure this dialogue to be more effective, rather than a once-a-year gathering where everyone shares their stories or their woes, but a forum where we can, especially developing countries or countries that are beginning the process of digitization, how can we, one, learn from each other, help each other, exchange ideas, exchange knowledge, exchange technology, to create a much more globally and digitally connected community. I'm happy. We're love to attend the Armenian conference. Look forward to going to Bangladesh and Aruba. If you're ever willing to host us in Aruba, I'm sure we will not need any arm twisting to come and visit you, Your Excellency, in Aruba. But so putting this into a tangible format.
I think that's a good question. And in fact, it's time for the questions. And I want to take this question and turn it around. And I mean, all four of you are incredibly inspiring. And I was sort of doing a mental list of the initiatives that you've mentioned. If you put those all together, you've got the best e-government in the world right there. I want to ask about the difficult part of your job. What is the hardest challenge you face as a minister? And you know, how do you make this sustainable? Because the next minister may not be as innovative as you are. The next government may have other priorities. And this is a lot to put into one question. As you're looking at these difficulties, how can we help? I mean, this is a question you were asking. How can Estonia help? How can countries help each other? How can the global community help you? What is the support you need to be effective as ministers to keep on pushing this change? Please.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we have shared all of our success stories and also challenges. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, he mentioned a lot of things, what we are actually facing, and we have to overcome all. In my observation is the main challenge in front of us is increasing the digital skills gap, because you see by 2020 more than 90% of jobs in the European Union will require digital skills. So you can understand across the globe the same picture is in every country in the globe. So my consideration is how we can actually reduce these digital skills and we can scale up our current skill set. Because when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, how we can actually shape our country, how we can shape the whole world by facing this fourth industrial revolution. And in Bangladesh, we have more than 600,000 online individual IT freelancers, according to the Oxford Internet Society report they published last year. So now, the many jobs are actually replacing by artificial intelligence, robotics, and many other disruptive technologies. If we could not able to cope up with all these changes, it would be really difficult to shape the fourth industrial revolution. And for that reason, if you talk about the administrative workforce, like bureaucrats or students, teachers, in education, health, or employment generation. The main thing is scale up the skill set and also how we can create the digital skill set. And for achieving all these targets and overcoming these challenges, in Bangladesh, what we are actually doing, we are setting up IT training and incubation centers in every universities, and also we are encouraging our kids to learn how to code, how to program, because it is equally important to learn coding and programming with math, science, and some other technologies. And that is why in our 170,000 educational institutions from primary level to university level, we're setting up digital computer labs. And we have made mandatory information communication technology subject as the mandatory subject from grade 6 to 12, and now we are going to the primary level. And I have already mentioned about we want to create the startup culture in Bangladesh. We want to encourage our future generation to set the problem solving mindset, because without having the problem solving mindset, we cannot actually cope up with this rapid and massive changes. In Bangladesh, 80% of our population who are below 35, and we have 80 million young workforce who are below 25. So we have a huge demographic dividend, and we'll be enjoying till 2041. And that is why, if you talk about Bangladesh, we are champion in providing the mobile financial service. Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation invested in our Bikash, which is one of the largest and number one mobile financial service provider. In Bangladesh, we have 50 million mobile financial bank accounts. So 5 years back, all the poor villagers, they didn't have any banking access, but now they are enjoying the banking facilities. At the same time, in Bangladesh, the leading motor vehicle sharing app is Patao, Shohoj.com, they are leading, and Uber is competing. So this is how our homegrown solutions are actually taking place in the digital economy. So currently, we are the second largest garments exporter in the world after China, but we are facing severe problem by the automation and robotics. So that is why we are setting up some center of excellence on frontier technologies with the partnership of IBM and different international IT players. And by this way, we are trying to overcome all these challenges. So in my consideration, this digital skill set is the main challenge to create. Thank you.
I think that's very wise. I mean, I think one of the difficulties that you have as a developing country is that the kind of traditional development path of industrialization isn't going to work with automatization, with AI coming in. So it's a very good focus. Minister Swaminathan, what keeps you up at night?
Actually, you see, in the human perception, people think that digitalization, people think of AI, that tomorrow these technology is going to take over their jobs. People see that as a threat. But in other words, today digitalization will help them to improve further. Because long ago we had that perception in Mauritius itself that people think that with digitalization that they are going to lose their jobs, that no more people will be required to do such a specific job. Yes, but in other words, they are going to improve themselves. And also that will allow us to improve further, I mean, the whole economy of the country through other major projects. Just like our colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister, just mentioned, is that we have bureaucrats. Yes, they see it as a threat. But today in Mauritius itself, now people are finding that their life, their day-to-day life is no more complicated. It's so simplified, and that things are going smoothly. But as we mentioned, is that we need to make the public using these services secured. In Mauritius, we have passed on the legislation to adapt to the GDPR of the European standard. So now the question is to communicate, to make people realize that digitalization, artificial intelligence, using the internet, using the e-services is not a threat. It's your companion of tomorrow. They're going to help you to improve further. This is one of our major challenges. This is why now we've gone to the root of it. I mean, going to school. And also in Mauritius, we have one of our major issues is that we have an aging population. Unfortunately, our population is decreasing. Birth rate has lowered. I don't know whether we can do that for AI now. But these are the challenges now, is that to make people use the e-services and see it as a partner, not as a threat.
If you can pull that off, you will have a lot of people knocking on your door from Europe, because I think that is one of the primary challenges for digitization politics here in the EU, is how to turn the politics around and build a political coalition for some of the positive aspects. Minister Al-Shakyan, what keeps you up at night?
Well, there are many challenges. It's very difficult to highlight one, but I would say that the main challenge is that one was highlighted, I believe, the bureaucrats and people's mindset when they think that something should be difficult to go and ask for help. So this is not for them for the people to learn more technologies, to become better, but to keep their position and keep the people asking their questions. Especially if it is a citizen, they should go and ask several times, and then they should ask again, and they could give or not, referring on one or other regulation that they might have. And it also brings to difficulty in streamlining the decision-making processes. When you need to change something, you should go to all the bureaucrats and ask their opinions. It is, of course, by law and by regulations. However, it makes very difficult to change something. So we should streamline the whole decision-making process, both inside the entities, like the ministries, and throughout the whole government system. Because people who designed this, many of them designed for themselves, for the people to come and ask them for help. It's that difficult. So what we do now, in tax system, for example, we change the whole law system. It is like this thick, and we make it like several times less for the business to enjoy, because they should not have risks of decision making because of the laws. And again, the same in all the processes. Streamlining these processes and keeping it in a change management, I think the main challenge for digital agenda right now in Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Prime Minister?
There's a lot that keeps me up at night, but what's relevant to the...
ICT related.
ICT related, first things is politics, right? The reform shouldn't be politicized. So if a minister we have a coalition government, if a minister from this party does this initiative, it shouldn't be shot down because it's from this party. We need to move, in our society, we need to move beyond the politics. Let the politicians do the politics, but the government officials do the governing. So that divide between politicizing everything and actually governing is a challenge that we face. The laws I mentioned, the bureaucracy, this all needs to be updated. But at the end of the day, what keeps us up at night is public expectation. You know, people demand better. They demand it faster, they demand it cleaner, they demand it better, and they're absolutely right to demand that. They're not demanding something that's unreasonable. This is what we should do as governments, as civil servants, as public servants, is to make people's lives easier and provide services to them, better, faster, cleaner. So that is a big challenge. At the same time, given the reality of today's world, digitizing while prioritizing national security. This is a challenge that rightfully keeps us up at night. but I'd say the number one challenge is, you can buy technology, you can put in all kinds of cabling and all kinds of snazzy technological gear, but as our colleague who won the award last night from the Kyrgyz Republic said, it's changing the minds. That is the number one challenge that I think we all face as developing countries or entities, and that there, I don't know if there is a secret recipe for that. I don't know if artificial intelligence can help us with that.
We want to change the minds, not replace them.
Yeah, right. So these are, I think, in a nutshell, these are the biggest issues that we face. Forums like this help because I've already going to go back with different ideas, but I will repeat again, by not just exchanging ideas, but actually working together, we can overcome many of these challenges, because none of these challenges are totally unique. Everybody has an experience that we can share. And I've heard several times throughout the conference, Estonians refer to themselves as a small country. You're punching way above your weight if that's the case, and you've given a whole new meaning to the phrase "size doesn't matter." This not about size here. You've done something here that's remarkable. Every one of these respectable ministers here has done something remarkable in their countries, and many in the audience here are those agents of change. So putting these minds together in a practical way can help us overcome these and create that connectivity that we would love to be part of, that we will definitely grow. And if there is one more part of the world that becomes more stable, there's one more part of the world that becomes more effective, this is one group of community in the world that is slightly happier today than they were yesterday, that's good for every one of you.
So there are a whole bunch of questions on Works Up. We're not going to be able to ask them, but I do just want to highlight some of the questions and throw them in the air, because I think that they point to some interesting things to be thinking about as we go on. One of the questions asks an interesting question, which is, if you don't have a tax system and you're not taxing your citizens and you have no income taxes, what are some of the other drivers that you can use? Then there's some questions about how you address the usage question, which came up in our discussion. A question about procurement. I mean, procurement is always a very difficult and touchy topic everywhere in the world, because there is no country in the world today that can do everything purely at home. When it comes to IT, not even the US, not even China. On the other hand, you do get into the politics around that, the national security considerations. There's some questions about how you achieve cheap internet, to what extent do subsidies make a difference. A question about proprietary software and open source solutions. There is one question I want to highlight in particular, which is, how do you address gender disparities in ICT in your countries? I think we would fail the usual panel watch test. We do unfortunately have an all-male panel here, but I think I see from the nods in the head that I think everyone's probably agreeing here that at the end of the day, if we don't get all of our population to really be doing some innovative work, well, all of the population has to include 51% of the population, pretty logically. So we're not going to be able to get answers to all these questions now, but I do know that these are all at the front of the mind for the ministers here. And what I want to say as a former civil servant is that I've really been inspired by the four of you. And it would be an honor and a privilege to be working for any of you. And I hope that you can tell your colleagues back home that you guys are doing a good job, but also that your teams are doing a good job. What I take away from the panel is that while this is a panel about technology and ICT, it's actually a panel about the human dimension, about public expectations, about how you manage the politics. The biggest driver ultimately is skills, because in spite of the noise around AI, it's still human beings using AI. So what we really have to worry about is the human mind behind the API setting the goals. We've talked a lot about the fact that ICT is a tool. It's a tool to make processes and procedures better. It's a tool that our societies can use to accomplish better goals and outcomes, but it's a tool, not a goal unto itself. And that it doesn't solve some of the underlying governance problems that we've had long before the digital era, from slow civil servants to mistrustful populations to complex federal solutions. But it can give us a new way of looking at them, a new light. It's also an equalizer. I mean, let's be very clear. The things you are doing today are cutting edge. And yes, You have challenges that are still developing country challenges. It's very nice to be Luxembourg with a GDP of $80,000 or $90,000 or euros per capita. That's not something you have. It's not something Estonia has either. However, we can also beat Luxembourg in lots of ways. If anyone here is from Luxembourg, no offense. So with that, I want you to give a real warm round of applause for all 4 of our politicians here. They need a pat on the back. Their work is hard, but they deserve the praise. So thank you, gentlemen. And before you go down, we also have some sweet mementos to hopefully leave you with some positive memories of Tallinn. So I'm just going to give you some candy. You said you were in a candy shop, right? Well,
Yeah.
voila.
Just
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Minister, thank you. Thank you. Hold on. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure.